Thanks, Rachel. In the lead, political parties are launching their election manifestos ahead of this year's general election on the 29th of May. The Electoral Commission of South Africa officially closed submissions for lists of potential candidates at 5 p.m. Now, some parties have requested an extension to the deadline as they are still scrambling to gather signatures and to consolidate their list. The Deputy Chief at the IEC, Masego Shiburi, says an extension to the deadline can only be applied for in court. He joins us now to discuss this even further. A very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. The deadline for submitting candidate lists has now come and gone. What internal processes are taking place as we speak on your end?
That the deadline came and gone, the majority of parties submitted online. There were few submissions that were done manually at the office of the Commission yesterday by the cut-off period. In terms of the timetable, now it is the period of verifying if those submissions indeed meet the requirements for contestations. To remind the viewers, a party that intends to contest must have submitted a list of its candidates. That list must have been accompanied by a deposit. Those are the requirements in respect of parties that currently have seats in national parliament or in one of the legislatures. For parties that do not have representation, would, in addition to those two requirements, also have to submit the requisite number of signatures. Those requirements are fatal. If a party fails to meet any of those three, their submission is dead in the water. If the party has met those three conditions, we will now review their list to see if there are any other outstanding documents that they need to submit, and we will inform all the parties by a date in the timetable, which is the 18th of March, to correct their deficiencies that may be attended to their submission. Similarly, for independents, an independent needed to have submitted their documents yesterday, paid a deposit, and also deposited signatures. If they failed to meet those three conditions, their submission will be, unfortunately, not be able to be salvaged. They will be disqualified. But we are still far from that because we are still yet to give parties notice of indications where a candidate appears on the list of party A but also was nominated by another party, or they stood as an independent. Parties will have a period to exercise an election whether to confirm that candidate or to remove them from their list.
I know that you've previously said that an extension won't be granted beyond yesterday's 5 p.m. cutoff, but of course there is the option of this matter being taken to court. With time not being on many of the parties' sides, what processes does that entail?
Our experience and given the jurisprudence in the court is that the courts are loath to interfere with election timetables, because if you give an equal time to political parties or contestants, you are invariably favoring others over those who have complied much earlier. But it is also not true to link the requirements for candidate nomination to the timetable. The requirements for candidate nomination have always been in our law. The only thing that has been added, and that was added last year in June already, so contestants ought to have known about it, was the requirement for signatures. We made the portal available even before the election was made known. We made the portal available to capture signatures even before the timetable was passed by the Commission. So it would be disingenuous to link candidate nomination requirement to the timelines in the timetable, because it is important, but it was not triggered by the timetable. Those requirements have always been known. There have been requirements over a number of elections.
Another bone of contention, I suppose, is the ANC now bemoaning the circulation of its elections candidate list. I mean, this was done, on social media platforms right after the party submitted their lists to you as the IEC. What is your reaction to that?
The party has been in touch with us to raise their disquiet with the circulation of their list prematurely, including the proliferation of personal information of candidates who appear on that list. The Commission conveyed its regret to the party because it would seem that the unauthorized distribution of that list emanated internally from the IEC. It is a person who released that list in an unauthorized manner because the period to release those lists has not yet come in terms of the timetable. We have also reported that unauthorized distribution of the party's list to the information regulator, as we are enjoined to do in law. We have instituted inquiries to try to establish the source of the distribution of that list, because the Commission takes a very dim view of the circulation of personal information of persons in circumstances where the time for making available party lists for purpose of objections has not arrived. Is
that you now holding some sense of accountability as the IEC to the leak of that list?
Preliminary indications indicate that the source of the leak was an officer of the Electoral Commission. We take full responsibility for that.
So what will happen? What will the repercussions be when you've conducted your investigation and found the person who did that?
If we find the person who did that, then they will have to be subject to the disciplinary processes of the organization, because the release of that information can only be done in terms of the timetable, but it can also be done by only authorized persons, which is the Chief Electoral Officer.
So when were you planning as the IEC to formally make those lists public?
The list will only be made available publicly for inspection on the 26th and the 27th of March. And the purpose of making those available is to enable any interested parties to raise objection to whether any person on a list of a party or an independent is qualified in terms of the Constitution to stand for election, and that they have met all the requirements of Section 27. So only then would we make the list available for inspection, and also in a controlled environment in the office of the Commission, either nationally, in the province, or in a municipal office.
Some of the newly registered political parties spent, the past couple of months and weeks scrambling to get signatures to meet the threshold and ensure that they have over 47,000 signatures of support in order to contest elections. I mean, we heard just this week the likes of newly formed BOSA leader Musi Maimane saying that to the IEC, really, that you've set up many rules and you can make it difficult, but they are going to be proving you wrong at every step. Why is it important to have these stringent rules for new candidates who, new political parties who want to contest the May 29 elections?
First, let's deal with this. It's not correct to attribute the setting of the rules and place that at the door of the Commission. Parliament makes legislation in the country, and that is a legislative arrangement made by Parliament, having followed a robust process, including public consultations. To come back to the question, let's put it this way.
Yes.
We currently have over 600 political parties registered in the country. 360 of those are registered at the national level. So if there are no requirements to contest, it would mean you must bring the ballot paper with that number of parties appearing on the ballot, whether they have prospects of being elected or not. And the difficulty then is that if voters are confronted with an unwieldy ballot paper, which is the only tool basically that a voter has to exercise a choice to select their party or candidate of choice and to make a mark for that candidate or party, so that that mark can be translated into representation into Legislative Assembly. But for those interventions, it would mean that all registered parties would have to be on the ballot paper. It is not a new thing in the country. It is not something that is only implemented in South Africa. Even in established democracies, there are requirements to contest. People must meet certain thresholds to demonstrate that their participation is not frivolous, that they have support among the voting public, so that you limit frivolous contestants and only enable those contestants that are serious, that have a chance of getting support appearing on the ballot paper. It is not a convenience for election management, but it is rather a consideration that a ballot paper must always maintain its import, which is a tool that facilitates choice for a voter, and that choice is translated into representation. Because if you don't do that, you're going to have to put ballot papers in multiple pages. That will slow down the voting process. It will result in spoiled ballots or miscast ballots.
Very well. Thank you so much for that. Let's leave it there for now. Deputy Chief at the IEC Masego Shiburi. We continue to bring you more news in just a moment. Up next, two faith-based political parties, the African Christian Democratic Party and Al Jamaa, will today launch their election manifestos. That's ahead of the May 29 polls. We look at the role and the impact of religion in politics. That conversation and more coming up shortly. Stay with us. Professor Tulu, good morning. How are you?
I'm cool. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. You're speaking to Mpo. I'm just testing our line. We are coming to you just now.
Thank you. Thank you. Yebo.
A reminder of the leading stories at this half hour. Political parties are fighting to keep their place as they intensify their campaigns across the country. The African Christian Democratic Party and Al Jamaa are among those launching the election manifesto today. The ANC bemoans the circulation of its elections candidate list on social media platforms after the party submitted their names to the IEC. The United Nations accuses Israel of expanding its settlements in the Palestinian territories by a record amount, saying this eliminates any possibility